Bants or bullying, bants or bullying. We're playing a game called Bants or bullying, bants or bullying, bants or bullying. It's rarely bants, it's usually bullying. I'm just about to play through the demo for Mask of the Rose, a Fallen London visual novel dating simulator and, as I understand it, crime mystery. I'm completely cold, so beyond knowing, obviously, a fair amount of stuff about Fallen London. In February 1862, with no warning at all, London fell through the surface of the earth. It so often happens. It's set, actually, I do know from having read a little bit around it, it's set in the early days of Fallen London, after London has just been stolen by bats. This was meant to be a year of progress and industry. The Great Exposition, trams, a new sewer system. Instead, we find ourselves dwelling in a cave. It's October now. The fires have been put out. The bodies have been buried. They won't like that. But the future remains unimaginable. The time before impossibly distant. I fall into my Tales from the Elysian Society voice. The past. Who were you? Let's have a look. An arcane academic. I studied esoteric writings, the hierarchies of spirits, the language of angels, the practical powers of creation. I have friends in high places and am familiar with the church's ways, whether I agree with them or not. Strong first contender. A dock worker's child. My father worked the docks, unloading ships. My uncle was a sailor. We were on the right side of the law, but the same couldn't always be said for our friends. The docks are allied with the working class and with criminals. I think the accent alone will get me cancelled. Oh, right, so those are my only two choices. An arcane academic or a dock worker's child. I'm tending, I have to say, for the sake of safety, towards an arcane academic. Liam, on the other hand, is saying I should do the docks. You realise that I'm going to end up having to read out all of my dialogue in a terrible Cockney accent, don't you? Well, not even Cockney, Mockney. Fine. You're my only fan right now, so... That's me, a dock worker's child. Down here, no, I'm not doing the narration in that voice. Down here, your name is whatever you say it is. Often there's no one left to remember who you used to be. I wrote fan fiction for this, incidentally. All in London, a long time ago. Back in LiveJournal days, which tells you how long ago that was. Some people held tight to the names they carried before. Some reinvent themselves completely. Aha! How should people address me? I prefer strangers to address me as Madam, Sir, Milord, Milady, Citizen, Comrade, Captain, Lieutenant, Doctor, Professor, Officer, Secretary, Brother, Sister, Reverend, Intendant, Monsieur, Madame, Mademoiselle, Miss, Madam, back to Madam, Sir, my Lord. I think Comrade feels appropriate. It was a while ago, yes. Now, my Fallen London character is called Ambrose, as I seem to recall. Not in any way a reference to any American Revolutionary War or Civil War authors. I think I will be Comrade... What's a good name? Valentine? No. Christopher? Bob? Jack? Comrade Jack. It is a good selection, yes. If it's anything like Standard Fallen London, or indeed Sunless Seas and Sunless Skies, it won't make any assumptions about gender. I've been thinking actually for a while of restarting Fallen London, mostly because, as I say, when I popped in I couldn't remember anything I was doing. That's me, Jack, to my friends, Comrade, to strangers. not sure I'm getting into the spirit of this. That's how I was addressed even before London fell. I'm a different person down here than I was above. Down here, I'm finally able to use the name that always fit me. That's nice. But I think that's how I was addressed even before London fell. Ah, cameo. I like the art style. That is a nice rectangular-headed person. We appear to have Alan Moore. I think that's me. Yeah. Yeah, that's me. Underneath, a true ally means everything. When I find people to be close to, I'm looking for friendship. Ah, right, okay. Given there are dating sim elements, friendship, attraction rather romance, romance rather than attraction, both romance and attraction. Oh, I'm not sure. It seems odd to have a dating sim elements that are only about friendship, but what do I know? I'm not even entirely sure what the difference between attraction and romance is. Yo, let's dive straight in. Select an item to change it. Comrade Jack. Okay, nice straightforward character creation. I'm going to confirm my choices. I'm happy with this. Right now, I'm meant to be helping with the census, finding out who still lives in my neighbourhood. On my manor. The first census results are due tomorrow. If I turn them in, I get paid. The first money to come my way in nearly 2 months. If I don't, I'm going to disappoint Grizz badly. Now, who is Grizz? She knew I was in trouble, so she went out of her way to find me work with her own employers. She even gave me a badge to show my affiliation. I do like a nice badge. An item was acquired. Badge of the Ministry of Accounting and Recounting. The front of the badge looks almost like a constable's badge with the lion and unicorn blazoned on it. The back of the badge has some kind of symbol I don't recognise. Hot to the touch. Aha. I keep it with the clothes I have from before the fall and a few odd items I found more recently. Badge indeed. Oh, I have an outfit. Not a very sophisticated look. Not a look at all. Oh, wow. Okay, so I start off with a couple of hats. A mushroom hat, grand, exotically trimmed, and very much a creation of the Neath. Wearing this hat when courting always inspires me with additional flirtatious things to say. Okay. Ah, so I have two styles of mushroom hat. You can never go wrong with the top hat, says I. Looks good. Face. I have a face. Lapel. I should wear my little badge. The front of the badge, yep, we've just done that description. Let's wear the little badge. Looks good. Obviously, an element of Fallen London was putting your outfit together and equipping yourself with a ridiculous pet as well. And I have a sailor's top. It's the perfect thing to wear while seafaring, even though there's not much option of that here. Okay. I'm not sure that does look good, you know. I look like I belong on the docks, but what a hat. Fair enough. I assume this is my room. Grease. Ah, I thought you were up here. He glances at the badge I'm wearing. I suppose I should be glad you're thinking about the census, even if you didn't get around to leaving the house. Some days you don't get around to leaving the house. We've all been there. I react to that the same way I react to many things these days. I turn it into a joke. I dare to name the frightening things out there. I lie. Ooh, yeah, I turn it into a joke. In fact, I just turned it into a joke, so it seems appropriate. I thought I'd better wait for a change in the weather. A lovely snow, perhaps, says Grizz. There's no sunshine down here. There are no yellow peasy fogs. There's no rain, except occasionally a fine mist. Londoners lost half our topics of conversation when we fell. Come tomorrow evening, we need to have at least a few census forms filled out, says Grizz. Or I'm going to be the one explaining to Mr. Pages. Mr. Pages! So we are clearly working for one of the masters, the sinister, hooded figures responsible for running fallen London. And if that happens, I'm not going to help you with your employment prospects again. Oh, no pressure, Grizz. Grizz works for the Ministry of Accounting and Recounting. He seems to agree with her. He wears trousers to work and comes home at all hours. It's very important to her being taken seriously by these employers. The next thing I do is characteristic 2. Compliment her, reassert control, be open and build trust, rely on dark humour. Opinions? My gut instinct is to go with be open and build trust, but I'm not going to deny that I'm drawn to rely on dark humour. Dark humour. Dark humour for the win. I should have realised I'm asking the wrong person. Did your employers say whether I should also interview the squid-faced men? Or are they not included in the census? I believe they were invented by the newspapers, but if you happen to meet with any, by all means record their names. Arm folding is not positive, but I know squid-faced men exist because I played 4 in London. What about the Talking Crows? Let's confident on the Talking Crows. Oh, he's not happy. Consider yourself at liberty to include any creature capable of telling you its name or occupation. What do you think of the questions? I have not read the questions yet. I've only glanced at the sheet of paper. They're written in the most peculiar spiked handwriting, and there are punctures in the paper, in random spots. Peter, as though I think that's her handwriting, jokingly defend my reading ability, ask her what put these holes in the paper. Now, if I were playing the academics, Leva says it's the men-faced squids you really have to worry about. Now I have a horrible visual image. If I were playing the Arcane Investigator, I would be asking about the holes in the paper, but as it is, I'm going to jokingly defend my reading ability. For I am a geezer, probably. Are you saying you don't think I can read? No. This is not the usual writing, says Grizz. Here, try the questions on me. Ah-ha-ha. So I'm about to give you the census questions, just getting used to them, but also finding out about your character. So you've just knocked on the door, and I've come to answer it. Yes, what do you want? Introduce myself as an agent of the ministry, showing my badge. Read the first question. I assume that clothing symbol is something to do with, yes, a tutorial, is something to do with the fact that I'm wearing the badge, so let's go with that. Good evening. On behalf of the Ministry of Accounting and Recounting, I have a few questions. Oh, how lovely, says Grizz. She seems less annoyed with me. I'm so grateful these ministries are looking after us. Aha. Straightforwardly accept her performance, sarcastically accept, flirtatiously riff on how excellent the ministry is. Read out the first question. I am going to stay in character, and I'm going to sarcastically accept. Yes, that's just what people will say. You ought to be on the stage with Mary Poppins. If I ever had considered such a thing, my mother would have beaten the consideration right out of me again. Ooh, okay. We might have accidentally strayed into choppy waters. She's smiling, but somewhat wistfully. Not at all a done thing in our circles. Oh, I want to give her a hug now. Well, go on. What's the first question? Read the first question. How many people live in this establishmentation? How many people live in this establishmentation? Is that a word? Establishmentation? My superiors are enthusiastic embellishers of the language, says Grizz. We've all been there. If you like, you can translate into questions that are more likely to be understood. Where would be the fun in that? Right. How many people live in this establishment? 4. Okay, useful to know. The landlady, Mrs. Hortensia Chapman, a young man named Archibald Reed, myself, and a 4th character, very disreputable. That'd be me. Points out that there used to be more lodgers. Joke that she's not counting the vermin. Suggests that she might not be the picture of respectability herself. I'm not going to be rude. There were more lodgers. And were I playing the arcane investigator, I would probably go with that one. But instead, I'm going to joke that she's not counting the vermin. You forget, our basement has more rats than Noah's Ark. More than 2, you mean, says Grizz. Ooh, burn. At the end of its voyage, I should have said. Let's read out the next question. Okay, so we know there's 2 other people, a landlady and a guy. Is anyone in this establishment enamorificated or impassionated? What does this even mean? They're asking if anyone here is in love. Just ask that, says Grizz. Is anyone here in love? No. Aww. Lisa suggests misfortunes in love might explain Archie. Ask whether she's sure about herself. Ask whether she's sure about Horatio Chapman. Horatia Chapman, landlady, sorry, I apologise. No love here. I think the point for us is to perhaps matchmaker some love later. So I'm going to suggest that misfortunes in love might explain Archie as a way for me to gather information about Archie, and also because it's the jokier answer that isn't actually cruel. We may be the Bants or bullying channel, but for today, we're going to stick to not being Bantsy or bullying. If Archie were in love, it would explain his gloomy spells, says I. Oh, this could be bad. Pining for a lass back in Glasgow? He's never mentioned such a thing. Archie is from Glasgow. I'm going to get cancelled if he turns up. Or he's got himself in a tangle with one of his patients. Aha, a doctor or alienist. I hope not. I don't picture Archie surviving a brawl with an irate husband. Is she unhappy because she's picturing Archie being brawled with an irate husband, or because she fancies him? At this moment, a second visitor walks in, filling up this convenient right-hand side of the screen I'm expecting. Archie is a medical student. He hadn't finished his training before the fall, but he has plenty of work now. It's quite rugged. Oh man, do I do the accent? I'm not sure I can do the accent. I can't really do Glaswegian. I wondered where you were. No, that was Norwegian, practically. Points out that he could not, before entering my room, greet Archie flirtatiously, guess at why Archie is here. Was that romance music you heard? I think it might have been romance music you heard. I'm not going to point out that he should not before entering my room, because I don't seem to be that sort of guy. Do I greet him flirtatiously, or guess why he's here? I'm asking the chat, and by the chat I mean Liam. Yes, yep. Archie, is something wrong downstairs? Has there been a new disaster? Oh, well, okay, so he's not amused. Just let me think if I can I channel Billy Connolly? Not the kind you're thinking. No, I can't do Scottish. I'm not even going to try. Not the kind you're thinking of, says Archie in his Glaswegian accent. Out I went this morning to visit a patient, and what do I find pasted on the wall? He holds up a broadsheet. There's a new decree from the Ministry of Cartography and Chirography that all maps and atlases are to be surrendered and put on fire. I can't do this. Let me look at that again. So the Ministry of Cartography wants all maps and atlases burnt. It's your folk making these rules, Grizz. That was a bit better. Oh, tension between Grizz and Archie. Take Archie's side and demand to know what's going on. Suggest that the masters aren't trustworthy. Stay well out of this. Well, I'm not taking Archie's side and demanding to know what's going on. I'm going to... Ooh, suggesting the masters aren't trustworthy might annoy... Stay well out. I have no view. Will you be asking your Mr. Pages about these maps? Asks Archie. Mr. Pages expects some loyalty from his people. None of us knows what is safe down here in the Neath. Most likely there are reasons you can't imagine. Jack, please do collect at least a few census forms by tomorrow. I will do my best. At the end of the day, I'll find you and we can take them to Mr. Pages together. Why, Archie? You know what I miss the most? Back home, my sister's hair turned colour when it rained, blonde to a wet plastered brown. Like a mad hen she looked. Ask him a census question, check how he's feeling, get some sleep. Well, I'm not going to get some sleep. I'm going to check in with Archie. It does appear that was all of the questions. How many people live here? Are you in love? I suppose we can find out by asking him a census question, but I want to check in on how he's feeling. Build some empathy. I feel like my jokes didn't go down too well earlier. How are you holding up, me old cock sparrow? Western Grizz, I will not lie. Seems there's no road out of here. Food from the masters is a wee reprieve, but when you think of all else that might kill us below, scurvy and the like. A great hulking rock fell on a house in Suffolk, did the roof in and near to killed half the household. But I'd best be quiet, like to give you nightmares too, and I'm fair out of laudanum to help with your sleep. Now I'm going to ask him a census question. Grizz has me gathering census pages for ministry. Aye, Grizz told me it was some such thing. Oh. Okay, so we're into the census. Matters of the heart, employment. Matters of the heart. Flirtatiously ask about his romantic commitments. Put the query, making it clear this is for the census. Ask using the exact wording of the original census question. I wonder if that's because I'm wearing my mushroom hat. Put the query, making it clear this is for the census. The census asks whether you're in love. Down here? Nay. What about before February? There was a lass back home, and what did my mother do but promise me to her? I don't know. Suggest he might prefer a more local alternative. Keep my opinions to myself. Offer possibly unwelcome views on his mother. He might prefer a more local alternative, given we are now trapped in a giant cave underground. That sounds a long way to go to be finding a bride. Might be there's someone better suited here in London. Well, I never had much nerve for courting. Might be no one down here would take a fancy to me anyhow. I think I've gone Welsh, haven't I? Anything else you need for the wee form? Let's give a census question. We've got more census questions. Let's find out about his employment. Rely on what I already know. Use my knowledge of him to bring up the topic. Ask flirtatiously. There's a lot of flirtatiously here. I think it's that fucking mushroom hat. Ask, making it clear this is for the census. Use my knowledge of him to bring up the topic. Let's be friendly. He's smiling. That's good. You must be spending a great deal on medicines. With all the people you treat, do your fees cover everything and enough for yourself? Aye, I did sell off a couple of my old atlases just today. Censored maps sell for a good price if you know the right buyer. Yep, Welsh. I keep sliding Welsh. Ferret's vermin eradication takes in more than just rats. Okay. ferret is the local menace eradicator, and there's significant need for their services lately. Rats, moles, spiders, destruction and disposal. That is a new location. I don't know how that works, but we'll find out, hopefully. This is everything I need. Sleep well then, will you? Oh, no, fuck it. Sleep well then, will you? I can only apologise to everybody who has just had to sit through me doing Archie's voice. Boo! To quote Ring. 231 days since the fall. It is the season of confessions. Still in my room, which is at least a garret. The newspapers aren't what they used to be, but someone is still printing broadsheets these days. Archie bought one, and the headlines read: Renowned scientist pronounces recent events result of volcanic activity. Sun veiled in ash. We have fallen into a cave deep beneath the earth. It is not a volcano. Okay. Okay, so this seems to be the game proper. We've got money. We've got paperwork. Maybe I shouldn't have clicked on that. I'm always reliving London's last night on the surface. I tried to put it out of my head, but it's still there. The dimming of the sun at 3 in the afternoon. The sky turning the colour of rust. The horrible bang and the cloud of dust from the direction of Westminster. The tolling of the bells. That is not good. The horseman who rode down the street, liveried in the garb of the palace, shouting, "In Her Majesty's name, go indoors." And then the sky was full of bats, more bats than I thought could exist in the world. Wheeling, shrieking, defecating. People went indoors then, if they'd ignored the cries. People went indoors then, if they'd ignored the cries. Those that had no house crowded into the churches and under the bridges. Even now I don't understand. Bats! What's not to understand? Why? Even now I don't understand why Parliament collapsed, how Her Majesty said the cries that so many bats could exist in the world. Now my knowledge of fallen London makes me want to ask the second one, but instead I will do the, how could there be so many bats in the world? It was not only in our part of London, they were everywhere. Perhaps I should say, they are everywhere. Ooh. Yes, bats. I remember bats now. They carry messages in fallen London. Oh, here's Archie. In his broad Glaswegian accent, Archie says, "I reckon it's a tornado. I've read heard. Right. I feel like I ought to make a... Because they've basically said if you spot any typos. So Archie heard. Oh, something similar in the Welsh Hills back to 1760. Okay. And continuing in his strong Scottish accent, he says, "Nae light in the sky and a noise like a thunderclap." Horatia says, "That's no tornado, love. It's a plague of Egypt." I think Horatia is also local. I let them talk. I interfered before they annoyed one another. I sent a pleading look at Grizz. I intervened before they annoyed one another. The newspapers would tell us in the morning what it was. Leastwise, it'll make a good story for the letters home, says Archie, the Scotsman. Glasgow will be envious of our London fashions, says Grizz. These obviously are the other people I live with. Then the ground shook again, and the pipes rattled on the wall. This is quite cool, because obviously fallen London starts with quite heavily beneath the ground. I don't think I've ever really heard anything about the actual disaster that causes people to be dragged beneath the earth. Oh. I believe we can blame Mr. Basilgate's excavations, says Grizz, digging about under London, causing a seismic disturbance. So Grizz is blaming sewers. And what did he find the Doon there but a cave of 3 million bats? Is what you reckon? asks Archie a little sarcastically. There are stranger things beneath London, says Grizz. Well, there are now. That was the beginning of it, but we were down there for hours and hours. The sky darkened, and it didn't return to normal. Once, around midnight, Grizz went upstairs and opened the door to the street, but she came right back down again. She said the cobbles were galloping about. It wasn't safe to walk outside. After that first bit, the memories collide and get confused. I have trouble keeping track of which came first and which came later, and whether I'm imagining something. I've spent a lot of days like this, thinking back, trying to piece together the bits of the puzzle. As if I could realise something that would make sense of it all. London was stolen by bats. What is there to make sense of? I've lost a pen. It's annoying me. Right, so I could change my outfit. I don't think I have anything to change into, but let's just do a quick check, because I cannot help myself in this sort of environment. I'm happy with my hat, I think. Yeah, I haven't got... there was an exclamation mark earlier, so I'm assuming that means I haven't got one, so that leaves me head outside. That is probably pull back, that's probably options. That's nice. I imagine that there'll be a go to sleep option turn up over here. Yeah, anyway, head outside. Let's go. Let's see what we've got. I'm assuming some sort of 3D. Right, that's the boarding house. We know where that is. St. Albans Proto-Martyr. That is presumably a church. And there's Ferret's shop. I kind of want to interview Horatia, but let's go to Ferret's shop. I don't have any money. The local menace eradicator. Significant need for their services. Collect census information from the menace eradicator. Oh, music's changed. Good morning, says Ferret. Ferret doesn't look straight at my badge, but it's been noticed all the same. Everything's all right and tight here. Regular inspections and all that. We pay the constables their due. I'll bet you do. Introduce myself as an agent of the ministry. Introduce myself flirtatiously with my flirtatious hat. Give incautious rein to my sense. I don't know why I'm even bothering to reach the end of the sentence. Yeah. Human at that. Born of a woman, lived under the sky. If you can't say the same, at least break the horrible truth to me gently, will you? Oh dear, Ferret, but you should see that in the shop window. Pleasure to meet you. Inquire into the particulars of the rat-catching profession. Bargain for that red wig behind the counter. Try buying the second-hand prison jacket behind the counter. Ask Ferret some census questions, be off. I want a second-hand prison jacket. I have no money. Let's find out how much it's going to cost. Be useful to find out what sort of money we're talking. Its only purpose would be to make me look at home among criminals. Ask Ferret for the prison jacket as a gift, bide my time, and ask when I have more to bargain with. Let's take the mick. Could I have that prison jacket there? It costs a new penny, Jack, not one of the old ones. Currency with the Queen on it don't mean what it did. Oh, appeal to the honour of thieves and scoundrels. Imply they will be regret refusing me. Beg them for help, leave the request as it stands, offer to assist with something around the shop. Now the adventurer in me says do the side quest. But I'm going to appeal to the honour of thieves and scoundrels. What if I told you I can make good use of anything you give me, make the neighbourhood a more prosperous place for everyone? Ferret hesitates. Wouldn't want you to take me for a flat. They haul out the prison jacket. It ain't a particularly flattering garment, and mind the stains. But it's got long sleeves, so it's warmer than nothing, eh? Hooray! The jacket says I spent time in prison. That's not how I acquired it, but it doesn't encourage trust. I'm feeling quite silly for having gone to all the trouble to get a prisoner's jacket. Inquiring into the particulars of the rat-catching profession. Yes, Liam is pointing out that we'll probably get paid for delivering census returns. But I've got myself a prison jacket now, so if the worst comes to the worst, I can take up burglary. Bargain for the red wig, ask some census questions, be off. Now I'm going to inquire into the particulars of the rat-catching profession. His business good then. Oh, he's pleased with himself. I've been rat-catching and mole-killing for many years now, but I've never seen the business like this. There's demand for the eradication of the beasties, and demand for their bodies when you've done them. So the wages have never been so good, but I don't get so much competition as you might expect. Though it stands to reason, considering what one finds in a rat nest these days. What does one find in a rat nest these days? If you ask me, in a year or two, we'll need more than a terrier to catch rats with. Might need firearms, you might indeed. Ask how the rats have changed. Talk about something else. Let Ferret lead the conversation. Tell me about rats, Ferret. What's different about the rats now? He shifted slightly to the side. Hungrier, aren't they? They're used to a city's worth of scraps. Suddenly London scraps aren't worth having. They'll come out bold as day and take a loaf off a man's plate if you aren't careful. And you hear stories, don't you, about rats getting so eager they'll gnaw on an infant in its crib. I've read that James Herbert book. Panic, calmly accept what's being said, react as though they can't be serious. You're having a... No, we'll wait and see what I say. Quite the joker, ain't ya? Truth to tell, I haven't been called on to deal with any chewed-on infants that wasn't already deceased. Oh dear. Unsavoury subject. Yes, it is. Go on, Ferret. What have you got to say for yourself? I like Ferret. I like his ears. That form. Do you have to put on it whether a person is a gentleman or not? Oh, yes, good point. Right, refuse to divulge your nature for the census. Don't think so. We're getting along with Ferret. Show off the spot where the form asks for occupation. Say there's nothing on it about gender. There's nothing on it about gender. Does it ask me anything about whether a person is male or female? That's good, says Ferret. Can't say I've ever liked answering that one. Alright, whatever. Have they got something else to say? Any chance you might help me mend my traps? I'd be in your debt, says Ferret. If I say yes, it would no doubt take me the rest of the day to finish, but a favour from Ferret might be of some use in the future. Right, okay, so time is also a commodity then, pretty obviously. But bugger it, let's help Ferret out. Agree, but say they will owe me. Agree out of long friendship. Explain why I'm the wrong person to ask. I think I'm going to agree out of long friendship. What makes you think I'd do any such thing, you penny-squeezing thief? Thanks, friend, says Ferret. Apparently we know each other. So I spend a most agreeable afternoon repairing traps and cages. Now and then, Ferret whistles tunelessly. Go on, let's see what else Ferret has to say. Do come back, especially if you have something of a verminous nature you want looking into. Or if you meet with any likely urchins that wants to apprentice. A side quest. I went looking for the ragged school, but they ain't to be found where they used to be. It's almost time to eat. Oh bugger, I think I've missed the opportunity to ask him for any census questions. Uh-oh. I am a feckless waster. Grizz is waiting for me. Whatever census forms you have ready, it is time to take them to Mr. Page's, says Grizz. Say that I'm ready, ask if we couldn't have supper instead. Yeah, I want me supper. Now, I'm famished. Mr. Page's has been expecting these all day, says Grizz. Mr. Page's is going to be quite disappointed. He's eager to see what you've made of the collection. Once I've shown you how to reach the ministry, you can come back on your own and turn in others. Don't like that turn of phrase. Grizz has me gather my papers. With luck, Mr. Page's will decide to keep you on, says Grizz. With that, she leads me outside and along down a side street that is no longer named. Yeah, is very much my feeling as well, Liam. The way is serpentine, through streets that do not seem to lead towards the spires at the centre of the city. But each time I look up, it is closer, the spired building on the horizon. Finally, we find ourselves standing in its shadow under its walls. Before us is a low door that once, I think, belonged to a solicitor's office. I had one job, that is very true, and instead of doing that job, I palled around with my mate Ferret and repaired their cages. Grizz takes out a key made of something other than metal and unlocks that door. What is something other than metal? That is not a description that fills confidence. Mind the pile of papers. I've already sorted them 3 times, says Grizz. Clearly worried I'm going to knock the papers over like some sort of bull in a china shop. Presumably because she has met me. Mr. Pages is very particular about the ordering of documents, clues in the name. Now, where has he gone? Usually he's here by this time of day. Oh, there you are, sir. We were just coming to bring you the census documents. Okay. That looks like somebody who's going to be very open to my explanation that I was busy repairing cages. A first instalment of many, I'm sure. Mr. Pages, may I present Jack? Jack, this is Mr. Pages. The whole Ministry of Accounting and Recounting is under Mr. Pages' direction. Acknowledge the introduction. Express gratitude for the job. Stand well back and make no sudden moves. I want to butter up Mr. Pages, given that I have screwed up the one job that I had, so I'm going to express out gratitude for the job. Hopefully without taking the mick. Thank you very much for offering me employment. The opportunities in London aren't what they used to be. Grizz assures us that they are improvicated. Improvificated. My apologies, says Mr. Pages. It is highly gratificatory that the populace of London appreciates their move. Gratificatory? Gratificatory. Point out that's not what I meant. Note darkly that the populace of London were not consulted. Ask whether Mr. Pages had something to do with the fall. I'm going to note darkly that the populace of London were not consulted. Does it make any difference what the populace of London think? I wonder... Oh no, does he look sad? Not at all, says Mr. Pages. What have you brought us? Hand over a finished census page about Archie. 100% of what I have achieved. Ah, most satisfactory, says Mr. Pages. There are secrets here. Are there? He gives me 2 shiny pennies for my trouble. Whoops. I turn one over, and it has a portrait on the back of someone who is certainly not the Queen. The face on the back of the coin stares at me until the hair prickles on my neck. It reminds me of a debt ode. I don't want to remember, and my breath hitches and slows and resumes. I'm holding 2 pennies now. He was easy to please. He's going to ask me for another one. We did not expect much from Archie. Underkhan Grizz, having already revealed that he is a lightless character. Underkhan? Ask Mr. Pages a few questions of my own. Okay, Mr. Pages. The census. Ask what the census is for. Ask what the romance accounts are about. Talk about something else. What are the romance accounts about? Why are you asking people about the romantic situation? Are you planning any related laws or regulations? I can't imagine that, says Grizz. You may consider the love stories remunerant, says Mr. Pages. An exchange for our generosity in the matter of food and clothing. We are paying love stories for food and clothing. Ask what the census is for. Ask whether the stories have to be true. Discover whether Mr. Page is looking for tales of a saucy variety. Are there any particular details that would enhance the pleasure of these tales? Yes, says Mr. Pages. Ooh. If you're able to convey the flavour of the hearts, that's ominous. And their resistance to the tooth. Yeah, that's very ominous. Metaphorically, says Grizz. He did not sound metaphoric. Ask what the census is for. I'm not going to ask whether the stories have to be true. Ask what the census is for. What are you doing with the census information? Sorry, that was the wrong voice. All of London's older records were destroyed in the fall, says Grizz. Not destroyed, says Mr. Pages, ominously. Rendered less than utilificacious. Many of the people counted as deceased. Moreover, the older records are omissionary. Perhaps it was time for such a thing. My uncle always said that the parliamentary procedures have the dust of the Tudors on them. Aha, so you have an uncle who's political? If not of King Alfred, did you make a joke there, Grizz? Ask how long the food will last. Ask whether the stories have to be true. How long will the food last? I haven't had my supper. If the Ministry of Supplies of Food, where did those come from? And how many more months will it feed us? The censors will provide us with a better understanding of requirements, says Grizz sensibly. There are methods of additional acquisition, says Mr. Pages. It's made of strangers. It is not value official for the people of London to starve. Talk about something else? Be off now, as I only have the one-person story to hand in. Grizz accompanies me out again when it's time to go. As we make our way back to Horatius, she asks me what I think of Mr. Pages. He tries to make it sound like an idly curious question. Make light of Mr. Page's tailoring challenges. Thank her for arranging this post. Dodge answering. I'm going to take the mickey. I tell her that I feel Mr. Pages must be a boon to robe makers throughout London. Oh. She replies that, judging by the ink stains, she does not think he replaces his wardrobe terribly often. The rest of the walk is taken up with speculation about Mr. Page's taste in gloves and boots. Bats! Does Grizz fancy Mr. Pages? Before we go back inside the house, she reminds me. We have many more people in the neighbourhood to survey for the census, says Grizz. You know how it's done now, so you can collect them and take them to Mr. Pages yourself. I have other duties, and I may not always be there, but Pages is, well, I'm certain you won't be harmed if you visit the ministry on your own. I'm certain you won't be harmed if you visit the ministry on your own. That is exactly what somebody who is not at all certain I won't be harmed if I visit the ministry on my own would say. Ask neutrally whether she has feelings for Mr. Pages. Silently conclude she has an interest in Pages. Note that her reassurance is not completely reassuring. Now, I was going to say ask neutrally whether she has feelings for Mr. Pages, but frankly, given that I have already indicated her reassurance is not completely reassuring. No one ever says, this kitten won't harm you. It's only dangerous things that we're told are safe. Yeah, I'm quite wise. There's a difference between things that can't do harm and those that won't, says Grizz, folding her arms. The latter are the more truly trustworthy. Horatio will be setting out the food now. Excellent. I am Hank Marvin. Probably. Alright, Archie. Still not doing your accent. Archie's already at the table when I arrive. When he sees me come in, he gives a guilty start and scoops some of his stew back into the tureen. Aye, aye. In his aforementioned Lord Glaswegian action, Archie says, took more than I'd a right to, but I'd not eaten any yet. Apologies. Urge him to be more careful next time. Say nothing, but don't have any stew. Shrug and take a bite. and take a bite. I'm not fussed. You put it back. I'm too hungry to decline my dinner just because it took a sojourn in someone else's bowl. Yeah, it probably says a lot about me that I didn't even consider that. There was a lass who asked me to come round and look at her brother, a Jewish family, says Archie. They usually go to their own doctor, but he's out of service or ran away or something of that ilk. Their old synagogue was destroyed in the fall, so they moved to the Tentagram Synagogue. I've discovered a new location, Tentagram Synagogue, an old synagogue and one that has weathered the fall very well. Rachel and David Landau. David has a stomach complaint, chronic. Perhaps they have trouble cooking. Oh, sorry. Horatio says, perhaps they have trouble cooking something palatable. It isn't easy these days with what we have. The sister's a beauty, says Archie. Aye, aye, Archie. He wouldn't leave the room while I saw to her brother. Ask what Rachel was doing, ask what David was doing, keep quiet. Ask what Rachel was doing. What was Rachel doing? Is that usual? What was she doing? Kept watching me while I worked, making notes in her wee book. Barely a sentence goes by in which Archie doesn't remind us that he's from the north. The far north. Felt as I was being marked on my bedside manner. And the brother? Will he live? Asks Horatio. Oh, aye. For a bit I thought it might be serious. But what he needs is his stomach settled. Tell unnerving stories about meeting Grizzly's employer. Choose a question from my notebook. Be off now. Choose a question from my notebook. Here we are. I'm going to pick up Horatio's census. Let's start with her employment. Rely on what I already know. Flirtatiously ask whether she does anything else besides run the household. Ask, making it clear this is for the census. I'm going to ask, making it clear this is for the census. I'm not flirting with the landlady. The census also wants me to write down anything you're doing other than running the household. The house has been my business a long time now. My father left it to me, says Horatio. He bought it so I'd have a good place to live. He didn't want to leave it up to whether I'd find a husband. Christian? Which I haven't. The butcher at the corner used to ask me, but I think he wanted more room for his children. Oh, right, the butcher at the corner used to ask me, but I think he wanted more room for his children. Let's find out about matters of romance. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Mr. Pages. Grizz took me to the ministry. Her employer wears a cloak like a highwayman and keeps offices like a solicitor. Oh yes, says Horatio. Is the ministry very grand? I wouldn't say grand, so much as extremely unnerving. They must be well-to-do if they're food enough to feed all of London. I'm not sure. Grizz is wise to work there. I've nae liked the sound of them, says Archie. Who is Scottish, remember? It does sound unusual, says Horatio. I admit, some of Grizz's stories give me a turn, but you mustn't be too quick to judge. These people at the ministry might have different ways from ours. Okay, fair enough. By now, supper is finished. He was basically a giant bat, but Horatio stands and begins putting the dishes away. Day 232. So, short days. Either that or I paid more than I should have done for the traps. Okay. Despite everything, there are still broadsheets printed. Right, this is the start of the day. The headlines today read, Sellers of kosher wine sought from before the fall. Good prices paid. Well, that's a sign, if nothing else. I might go and call it in on... that would be why. When I was clicking on those pieces of paper, I must have triggered Recall the Past. Go on, let's see if we've got anything new to learn. I remember the days of the fall in fragments. There are a few moments that I'm always drawn back to, memories that stand for everything else that happened. There are things I sometimes remember from that night that cannot have happened. Impossible things. If I concentrate, I can recall. Constable Hargett checked on us that night. I think Grizz did say something about her family name. I glimpsed something in a bit of mirror. I want to find out about Constable Hargett. I'd have done the mirror if I was the academic scholar. I think I might... yes, indeed, more flashback. I might go back and do the academic after I finish. Hargett turned up as the constable of these streets right around the time London fell. Suspicious? I didn't see him around here before that, but he's watched over the neighbourhood since. Okay. That day, when the sky had gone red, even though it wasn't yet time for sunset, Hargett knocked on the servant's door. He was carrying a lantern. Well, hello? All well in this house? Any wounded? Any missing? Any dead? Asks Hargett. Anyone bunking with you that didn't live here yesterday? It was Horatio who answered, of course. No, that's not right. Archie said something. It was Horatio who answered, of course. Horatio owns our rooming house. We were all living with her when London fell. I'm indebted to Horatio. Okay, good to know. Since the fall, I haven't always had the funds to pay for my room and board. She provided for me anyway. Oh, alright, okay. If there's anything to eat, I'm always welcome to join the other lodgers. She's never said a word in front of the other guests. Okay. If anything happens to Horatio, I will kill everybody in this room and then myself. Horatio. Everyone's here that's supposed to be here. No need to be concerned about us. It's the line of duty, says Hargett. There wasn't anything to find. If anyone does come to stay with you that doesn't belong, begins Hargett. I'm not turning away anyone from my door that comes in need of food or a bit of shelter, says Horatio. Gore. I was only going to ask you to inform the constabulary, says Hargett. Not sure how I feel about Hargett. In case they're suffering from confusion and have relations looking for them. Oh, okay. That's legitimate, I guess. We offered him something to eat before he left. We were glad when he left. The evening felt even more frightening when he was gone. We offered him something to eat when he left, in the spirit of Christian charity. We have a few provisions, if you need food. It looks like being a long night. I can't stay, but thank you, says Hargett. It's kind of you to offer. It's kind of me to offer. Okay, so we've introduced a new character, Hargett the Constable. It would be foolish of me. Prisoner's jacket. It would be foolish of me to switch into my prisoner's jacket, wouldn't it? Particularly as I'm probably going to go and see David and Rachel, so I shall stay in my sailor's outfit for now. If you could only go to one location a day, however, I can see how you might tailor your outfit for whatever it is you're planning. Oh, the bazaar. Ah, no, that would be where Mr. Pages lives. Okay. Let's go and see David and Rachel. Look for Archie's patients, the Landaus. I'm kind of enjoying this. It's quite straightforward. I've not really played any sort of visual novels before, but the closest I've got, maybe Disco Elysium, maybe, or watching Sam play Doki Doki Literature Club, which was, yes, that was an experience. We've never met before, but I recognise these people anyway from Archie's description. They have to be the Landaus, the brother and sister pair. He's been treating David's stomach pains. Okay. Wait here, Rachel. I'll speak with this person. It won't take long, says David. Good morning. Good morning. Introduce myself as a friend of Archie. Say only that we have some common acquaintances. I'm going to introduce myself as a friend of Archie. Yes. Liam was just talking about Doki Doki Literature Club. I thought it was very nicely done, what I saw of it, but it certainly unsettled Sam. I go by Jack. I have the advantage, I'm afraid. I know of you through a friend of mine, the young doctor, Archibald Reed. He and I reside at the same lodging house. Just noticed that the doctor is called Archibald Reed. And he's from Scotland. I'm David's sister, Rachel Simcha Landau. She adds the first name and watches me significantly as though I am supposed to have heard of her. I am Rachel's brother, David Landau, says David. Other Londoners might not recognise the hint of Iberia, but I heard just about every accent come through the wharves. Okay, so Spanish. Whatever his last name, I would guess he grew up among the Spanish and Portuguese Jews. The game is clearly expecting me to give Rachel and David hilarious Spanish accents, but I'm going to resist. Did Dr. Reed send you to us with some sort of message? Asked Rachel. I suppose I shouldn't call him Doctor, as he didn't qualify. Ooh. He would have known to find us here, says David, but I can't imagine what message that would be. We've paid his fees. No, I'm here on my own business, but he told me you might be here. What can we do for you? Asked David, almost certainly suspiciously. Explain that I'm working for the Ministry on the Census. Simply state that I have questions. I'm going to explain that I'm working for the Ministry on the Census. It's all above board. The Ministry of Accounting and Recounting have asked me to work on the census. Oh, I'll answer your questions, Jack, if you answer mine. Call it character research. So she's a writer. Oh. Are you having peculiar dreams down here? If I were to say it has been 0 days since I last referenced the wasteland, would that mean anything to you? Suggest that this whole thing is a peculiar dream. Talk up the lurid misery of my nightmares. Mention that Archie has patience with just this complaint. I'm going to talk up the lurid misery of my nightmares. In truth, my nightmares have become so extreme that I barely dare to sleep. While I close my eyes, I sense the dreadful malevolent presence. Ah, I asked for your feelings, not for a recitation of your famous Christmas ghost story, says Rachel. Oh, fine. Rachel, it was only the answer to a question, says David. Trust me, I interrupted just before we reached the dreadful clanking of ominous chains. I'll have you know that I'm a good deal more creative than that, thank you, Rachel. Or perhaps the lidless stare of serpent eyes. Okay, maybe. It's going to be sharks, though. And clowns. Clown sharks. I had forgotten till now, but I've dreamed of a snake that watched me in sleep, while all my limbs were heavy and too paralysed to move. I try to remember what it means, but the thought is gone again. Go ahead with your questions, Jack, says Rachel. Seems happy. Ask what she means about character research. Choose a question from my notebook. Take my leave. Ask what she means about character research. I think she's a writer, but let's find out. What did you mean when you said you had a question about character research? I write novels, says Rachel. They are published one chapter at a time in the Lily of London magazine. I was in the midst of one when the fall happened. My publisher insisted that I continue the story, despite all. Rachel, are you certain you want to share so much? Says David. David is quite suspicious. Oh, maybe he realises that there is a spark betwixt myself and Rachel. Does it matter? Surely those precautions are behind us. Oh. Ask what her story is about. Ask about her inspiration to become a novelist. What is her story about? Writers, I understand, love to talk about what their stories are about. What are you writing about? If you take the Lily of London, Jack, you may have the pleasure of reading my next chapter yourself. Though I confess, I'm at a standstill as to what it will contain. If in doubt, have a guy kick the door in with a gun. Oh. My heroine was meant to set off for Paris, and there to be reunited with her lost beloved. But as the fall has transpired in fiction as well as in fact, I must resign myself that the courtship is ruined. I admit that I would deal even worse with such a situation. Ask about her inspiration to become a novelist. Oh God, I'm going to end up wasting all my time talking to her instead of getting the census questions, aren't I? What inspired that choice of occupation? You know, It was another Yom Kippur many years ago. Our family gathered to break the fast. My Landau cousins at one side of my table, my mother on the other. The little Landaus, so devout, scandalizing my mother with, she would say, their low manners. Moved away. My mother, in turn, scandalizing the Landaus by seeming so almost English, with her lax views on kashrut. Each side unaware of how horribly it was affronting the sensibilities of the other. Oh, we've all been there. In such a moment, you either retire to a room to compose a savage Roman à clef, or you throw open the window, lean out, and scream. Those are the only possibilities. Rachel does herself an injustice. She writes with real sympathy, says David. You haven't always described it that way, says Rachel. I simply wish you would draw less extensively from life, says David. Question from the notebook. Yeah, screw you, David. Rachel, matters of the heart. I'm going to ask flirtatiously whether Rachel is in love. And I don't feel the slightest bit guilty. Are you married or otherwise promised? Are you in love? No, at least that isn't what I'd call it. Aha, okay, Rachel. Oh, David has moved away. Just as well, too. In the times before, you would never have darkened the door of such a person, says David. Before you cast me as the intolerant brother, Jack, you should know what we're speaking of. What are we speaking of, David? And also, I was talking to... Oh. Milton is a yellow-eyed, flash-dressed, hot-handed creature at least 2 decades too old for my sister. Hint for more information about Rachel's unsuitable friend. Choose a question from my notebook. Tell me more, David. Oh dear, the rules of polite society have broken somewhat in the fall, haven't they? Nothing of the sort, says Rachel. Milton is an artistic inspiration. If you are not a writer yourself, Jack, you cannot guess how much the fall has disrupted our sort of work. I know writers, yes, and they do like a certain amount of routine, sitting in coffee shops. Characters have certain tastes, certain preferences, certain prejudices. All I need to do is imagine them in new circumstances, and their reactions write themselves. But now, we've all been at least a little bit cracked by the fall. How does anyone behave? Who can say? You always said you wrote from observation, chimed in David. You can still observe. Since the fall, there's no pattern to what I see, says Rachel. These two are clearly not getting along. It is only home that makes sense to me, and I cannot make my whole novel about a brother and sister lighting candles at Shabbat. Ask why not, out of curiosity. Suggest that this is the point at which our art must truly develop. Hold my tongue. I'm going to hold my tongue. Out of characterism, maybe. The rest of the world must come into it somehow. Milton helps me sort the rest of the world. He can make sense of anything, even a viscountess running down the street in her peignoir. That is the least confusing thing that has happened since we arrived here, said David darkly. Let me say, Jack, Milton smokes rose-scented cigars. We should have him killed. David, I'm with you. He helps me, says Rachel. Nah. Into the Thames with him. Take her on Milton's side, encourage him to further gossip, choose a question from my notebook. Further gossip, come on. Goodness, really? Milton quotes poetry instead of making conversation, says David. I bet he does. Oh, she's getting narked. What does that signify? Asked Rachel, somewhat angrily. Milton carries in his breast pocket a jar of honey with a tiny spoon. That is not a good sign. Plenty of men of fashion behave that way, says Rachel, who has not played football in London. We're expected elsewhere, says David. No, I've screwed up again. Everything is always running too slowly, and yet every day is the same. No, David, let me ask one last question. No! Goodbye, then. Damn it. There's time to run one more errand today before supper. I've only asked one question on the census. So I think I've got 2 half censuses completed. So I'm going to pop into the boarding house and see if I can catch a ratio. Oh! Okay. Right, this time we are staying focused on the census questions. Find Harjit outside and ask him census questions. And after this, I think I'm going to have to call it and going about my very late tea. Going about the master's work, I see, says Harjit. I have something for you if you want it. He produces a nearly new admiral's hat in perfectly good condition. I found it in the docks, no sign of the owner, and I can't wear it myself. I thought someone at Mrs. Chapman's might get use out of it. Perhaps Lady Griselda. Aha! Right, okay. So, a new hat, an admiral's hat, trimmed with gold braid. It makes a person look like a respectable representative of the Navy. Wearing it gives me a commanding presence, but he also fancies Grizz. I have decided. Thank him profusely. Tuck it under my arm, naval fashion. That's why he thought of us. I'm tucking it under my arm, naval fashion, thank you. I suspect thank him profusely might be the flirtatious hat option. I tuck it under my arm, as they do aboard ship. You know, even if I wasn't already inclined towards this game because of its subject matter and because of how easy it is to play, the mere fact that it contains hats as a major consideration is certainly endearing it to me more. I took it under my arm just as they do aboard ship. Yes, I thought it might suit you, says Harjit. Ask how the neighbourhood is doing. Choose a question from my notebook. Be off now. Question from the notebook. Focus. Oh, okay. We've got multiple census questions here. Start at the top. Nah, I want to find out who he fancies. Is that a flirtatious facial expression? Flirtatious, census, exact wording. Oh, this is Mask of the Rose. The demo is on Steam. They've got a release date of October, November. It came out, it was a Kickstarter initially, and I annoyingly missed it because I wasn't paying much attention. Timing. But I'm probably going to pick it up when it comes out. I do like the feel of it so far. Let's ask about his romantic connections in a flirtatious way. Is there anyone special in your life, Harjit? I have met matchmakers before, but not in London, says Harjit. Oh! I'm wounded. Are all practitioners here equally unsubtle? I am wounded. Assure him that I'm safe to confide in. Appeal to the expectations of the constabulary. Leave the question as it stands. I'm going to assure him I'm safe to confide in. You can tell me, whatever it is. Okay. Even before the fall, it is not likely that I would have married. Oh, he's unhappy. My companion was not a lady. He was an Englishman who came to the Punjab. We became acquainted, and then more than acquainted. Okay, so not Grizz then. I thought he and I would remain together throughout our lives. I followed him here, away from my own country and everything I knew, to the home of my former enemies. He promised me that it was worth the sacrifice. He said we would never be separated. You'll observe that he isn't here. Oh, okay, so that is narked. I think that is the facial expression narked. Honestly, I need to get my wheel of human emotion out of this game, I think. Pungently condemn Harjit's former lover. Admit that I would deal even worse with such a situation. Do not presume to comment. Right, I'm not... I think pungently condemn Harjit's former lover might be a trap. He might be angry because he's died of typhoid or something. I would deal worse with such a situation. Do not presume to comment. I would deal worse with such a situation. Travelling halfway around the world. You're stronger than I am. I don't know how I would have got through such a thing. Ah, excellent. Okay. I thought it was a trap. I've been looking for him since the night of the fall. He's disappeared. He's not stormed off. I walked on streets that were tearing themselves stone for stone, looking for him. Ask whether he even still wants to find his lover. Leave the topic alone. Oh, man. I've got to ask him more senseless questions. But instead, I want to find out about his love life. Do you even want to find him? The moment I see him, I will know whether he's been waiting for me or whether his absence has been a betrayal. This feels like another side quest. Living in fear is no life, says Harjit. Okay, so he wants closure. They ask about employment as well, don't they? Have you been reading over my shoulder? A constable on my street died in the first night, buried under the rubble of a building. Okay. I claimed his uniform and his lantern. It was a way to continue my search. I did wonder if that was the case during the flashback earlier. You think we'll find him dead? Possibly. I would instead guess that we will find him alive, but how Harjit reacts depends on what we have done in the story up to that point, whether we found him a new love or not, or flirted with him intermittently ourselves. I thought I would put them aside in the morning, but we haven't seen the sun since. Right, I'm asking him another senseless question. I'm hoping I have more chance to talk to him like a normal person later. Let's get his name. Right, I'm not going to be rude. Interestingly, flirtatious doesn't have the little thing next to it, so let's make it sure it's for the census. What should I put on the census as your full name? Harjit Singh, an uncommon name here, says Harjit. I grew up in a large house full of people, built to withstand the heat of Lahore. My mother had beautiful rooms off the courtyard, open screened to catch the breeze. It was a mark of our family's wealth, okay? Now I live alone in a dank cave, and it's all I can do to keep the draft out. I know what you mean. Ask how the neighbourhood is doing. All well on the streets? I'm glad I'm not wearing my prisoner's uniform. Every day I can walk a little further without getting lost, but sometimes I lose a place again. You recall the second-hand clothes man who used to be around the corner? Say yes. Yes. At first I thought the shop was destroyed, but it's moved 2 streets away now, not only the shop, but the whole building that contains it. Ask how that is possible, calmly accept that shopping our neighbourhood moved locations, riff on the amusing implications. This could improve on the tram service. All the passengers enter the shop, it moves across London, everyone there. I'm a card. It's only gone a couple of blocks in all the months since the fall. It may need a more regular schedule. Okay. I wish Harjit a good afternoon. It's getting late, so I'm heading back home. Yeah, time. Supper. It's good one of you is here for supper, says Horatio. Neither Archie nor Grizz has made an appearance today. Good evening. I'm looking for Mr. Reed. Is he here? It's Harjit. Archie, he's upstairs. Listen. Yes, says Harjit. I know all the old maps have been outlawed, says Horatio. But if you come for his atlas, do you think you can leave it with him? It gives him a lot of comfort remembering all those little villages in Scotland where his family used to live. Aww. Put in a good word for Archie's map collection. Tell Harjit to get on with it. This is probably ministry visit. I'm supporting Horatio. Yeah, leave Archie's maps. He's not doing any harm with them, although I do know he's selling them on to people. That isn't why I'm here, says Harjit. Uh-oh, he's got his notebook out. The first rule of talking to the cops is apparently you shouldn't talk to the cops. Let them keep chatting over the matter or call Archie downstairs. I'm going to call Archie down. I go to the foot of the stairs and call for Archie. Harjit, I hope you're well. I'm sorry, Archibald, says Harjit. I'm here in the line of duty. Ooh. It's about David Landau, who had the stomach problem. Did something happen to him? Says Archie, reminding us again that he's from Scotland. I only saw him today. Oh. Shortly after your visit, he died by poisoning. This must be the mystery element. Died? The poor man. I'm going to react with shock. What? But I saw him very recently, Constable. I'm sorry to have to bring you this news, says Harjit. Oh, right, yes. Yeah. Is Rachel alright? Is there anyone with her to protect the house? Asks Archie. The Landaus said you were the last person to speak with David, says Harjit. That the fatal dose must have come from you. Dun dun dun! I didn't understand, says Archie. I'm here to arrest you for murder. Wait a moment, perhaps Mr. Landau's own relations took against Archie's manor and they're blaming him for what he didn't do. My manor? Says Archie. Well, okay. Your way of speaking is peculiar, love. Sometimes people leap to a conclusion for the wrong reason. I knew it was just time till something went awry, says Archie. There's too many folks ill, and can I cure the whole town? Liv is suggesting that murder is the only word I can say in a Scots accent. I can also say, oh, Mr. Finlay, we mustn't. Speak up for Archie. Ask if Rachel is alright. Ask where Harjit is taking Archie. I'm going to speak up for Archie. I thought we were friends, Harjit. This must be a misunderstanding. Archie is dedicated to keeping people alive, and I don't see him having the nerve to hurt anyone. Not on purpose, says Archie. Archie, you're not helping. No one can measure another person's courage just by looking, says Harjit. I'm going to ask if Rachel is alright, because he was definitely flirting with me earlier, and is almost certainly not the murderer, even though she's the only other character we have seen in relation to David who isn't, metaphorically, our nephew. How is Rachel doing? Does she have anyone with her? There's her housekeeper, Phoebe, and some friends from her community. They're preparing the body for burial. It can't be left unburied very long. Ask where Davy's been buried. I might have to go and dig him up and do an autopsy. Where are they burying him? They mean to take him to a Jewish graveyard at Ball's Pond. Rachel said there might be a dispute with their Spanish relatives, that their mother was buried somewhere else, but she did not think it would change the outcome. I'm going to ask where Harjit is taking Archie. Where are you taking Archie? Newgate Prison was destroyed in the fall. For the time being, prisoners are being held on the HMS Ungulate. Sounds like a very insalubrious environment, says Archie. Cold, damp, infested with vermin. Breathing the vapours of the Thames. Indeed, this is pre-sewers, isn't it? If Mr. Basilgate is only now drilling them up. It might not be good for the health of the prisoners. You're not talking your way out that way, says Harjit. No, I mean, if you didn't mind, before we set out, I'd like to get a few doses of this and that. Oh man, Archie. Things that might help to settle bad lungs and prolonged coughs. You're asking whether, before we go, you can be allowed to rearrange your collection of drugs and bring some of those drugs with you, asks Harjit. That isn't quite how I'd have phrased it, says Archie. When you stand accused of murdering a man through the use of potent toxins. Oh, come on, Harjit, you're just telling us stuff we already know. Oh, says Archie. For the sake of your future guards and cellmates, I think I must refuse. Ooh, you're so pleased with yourself, aren't you? I've gone off you. I've gone off, Harjit. Right, let Archie go. Horatia, I'll be back as soon as I can, says Archie. Don't let out my room to anyone else. Ah, right, this is actually the end of Act 1. Okay. So that's the end, presumably the end of this tutorial. Next time on Mask of the Rose. want to see the surface again? Tell me the truth. What's in the bottle? I don't know what it is. I only know what it does, says Archie. And you've no need to lie. I know I'm no seeing the surface again. Okay? This is nice. I like this little bit. Archie's books, says Horatio. Help me burn them before they give Harjit the wrong idea. There's a true story in here, and thousands of false ones. Compelling, but for next time. More heart crumbulence is required. My own people won't permit disturbing the gravesite, says Rachel. But you, I know you'll help me for your friend's sake, even if you don't care about David. I don't care about David. My companion is good with a shovel, says Horatio. Rachel, I'm sorry, I had no choice. We thought you were dead. I was. Dun, dun, dun! And we need to see to my murderer. The next time he tries, I might not be able to come back. I should probably cut this as it is all spoilers. Right. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Yeah, hit like and subscribe and buttons. I'll probably tidy this up a little bit, Liam, and stick it up on YouTube later. Thank you for keeping me company. I thought it was fun. Yeah, I am regretting not having kickstarted it. I should probably pick it up when it comes out. It looks fun. I'm probably going to go back and play it again as the academic. And actually, I might set up a new email account and restart playing Fallen London a little bit. It's quite giving me there was a lot of stuff in there that was a bit fan servicey that was quite giving me the taste to have a go back and have a look at it. Anyway, right, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. I might do some more streaming later in sort of like hour bursts and stuff. Look after yourselves. Bye. Bants or bullying, bants or bullying. We're playing a game called Bants or bullying, bants or bullying, bants or bullying. It's rarely bants, it's usually bullying.